Good morning. Hey, welcome to the Conservative Cat Show, Cities 92.9, the news and talk blooming to normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. We are going to be back. I had some technical difficulties this morning, restarted a new stream. So you can head on over to YouTube or Rumble. I don't know if I'm having issues on the live stream. We'll have to see. Well, hopefully hopefully we can kind of get this squared away. Test 1 2. Can you hear me, anybody? I want to make sure that we are live and ready to go and that you can hear me. Let's see. I'm going to try it one more time. If not, I'm just going to go to the radio. 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me? Let me know in the comment section if you can hear me. We're going live on YouTube and on Rumble, having some technical difficulties this morning, but we're going to try to get it all squared away. We're going to try to get it squared away. Let me know in the comment section if you can hear me. Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3. Can you hear me? Test 1 2 3. Okay, I've got it. I think that we're good. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news doc blooming to normal. We've had a little bit of technical difficulties on the stream. People are texted in. We started a new stream, so you can find me on Rumble and on YouTube and on Facebook. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about Daniel Penny, and he was rightfully acquitted here, folks. He was found not guilty, and he faced all of these unethical charges. Really, I just found it super unethical. And it was a big joke, the justice system in Manhattan. These charges that were brought against Daniel Penny, it made it into an even bigger joke than it already was, the Manhattan justice system. So the prosecutors, they dedicated this whole case to racial justice, right? Despite the facts of the situation. And now you've got BLM having a field day, and now they're threatening the masses over skin color. Let's take a listen to this BLM activist who's actually calling for vigilante justice, whatever the hell that.
We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
What?
I'm tired. We need.
Okay, so the most disturbing part about this video is that this guy is actually wearing a cross around his neck, and here's the most disturbing part. Let's take a listen to this part.
And kill us for being loud. How about we do the same?
How about we kill us for being loud? How about we do the same? Okay, now I can't believe this guy's wearing. He is actually calling for people to kill people over race, right? I mean, how else would you take that? He says they kill us for being loud, which is not what happened with Jordan Neely. Okay, how is it possible for someone to be that stupid? This guy here, and I'm sorry. I mean, you're just stupid. How do you make it this far in life? And why the hell are you wearing a cross around your neck? That's terrible. You're calling quite literally for violence, which is not what Christians do. You're calling for people to kill people, which is definitely not what Christians do. What is he even crying about? Because what, Jordan Neely didn't hurt people? I mean, he'd never hurt people that he had promised to harm on that subway. Jordan Neely had Daniel Penny not been there, he probably would have killed all kinds of innocent black people. Would they have been happier if Neely had been given full reign and Daniel Penny was not there to stop him? Would they have been happier had he had been able to kill innocent people on the train? What if he had harmed black people? Would BLM still be crying if Jordan Neely had killed some black people on that subway without the intervention of Daniel Penny, who's quite literally, I would say, a hero? by the very definition, he prevented Jordan Neely from hurting people. How else would you describe Daniel Penny? So additionally, it's unclear what BLM has done actually for the BLM community, other than the fact that they call for extremism and violence. This guy is actually calling for people to kill people. And it's disturbing, the gold cross around his neck. I mean, I've never heard a Christian say, yes, we should kill people. What? So all they do is cause destruction. They don't actually help the Black community. Jordan Neely being stopped by Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny helped the Black community because there were Black people in that subway that day. And perhaps had Jordan Neely been given full reign to harm these innocent people, Black people would have been harmed. And actually, you could make the argument that Daniel Penny has done more for the Black community than probably this guy, 100%. They don't do anything beneficial to anyone. It's an entire group of people that get together and they just cause destruction. So it's ridiculous to claim that Daniel Penny killed Jordan Neely because he was loud. That's just absolutely not true. He tried to hurt other people, and he said it with his mouth that somebody was going to die today. He said it out loud, and he proved that he was going to hurt people. Jordan Neely out loud with his mouth on the subway. Here's more activists. I want to play this. This, I believe, is Jordan Neely's father, right? And the fact that he, is acting like Jordan was the victim in this situation just tells you all you really need to know. This is, I believe, his father. And the fact that his father didn't come out and say, yeah, my son was, psychopathic, drug addict, and he was homeless and he was causing havoc. The fact that he's not taking accountability for his son's actions, which ultimately led to his death, tells you all you really need to know about this dad of Jordan Neely. So let's take a listen. Here we go.
BLM had threatened to burn down parts of the city, cars, whatnot. Let's watch. They're angry over Daniel Penny being found not guilty.
Do it for us. And clearly, if we get to this point, it's too late. We have to be there for each other, and that's our call to action. Everybody that's pissed off at this verdict, I challenge you to go outside today and help one person. Right on. That's my challenge. If you're angry, if you're hurt, go help one person. That's how we beat the system. That's how we turn this around, by being there for each other.
Okay, here I
just want to
is
say,
Jordan Neely's father, okay?
I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now?
All right, so that's Jordan Neely's father pretending to be a victim here, as if his son was not a psycho drug addict who was on the subway trying to hurt people, okay? And that's all you really need to know, okay? He grew up in a household probably with no accountability, because he's still refusing to take accountability for his son's consequences. The consequences happen, actions have consequences, and it's unfortunate. It's really sad that Jordan Neely was really addicted to drugs, and that he chose this lifestyle that ultimately wound up killing him. Okay, it's really sad. It's not that I don't have sympathy. Somebody died, but it was totally preventable death, and it definitely wasn't Daniel Penny's fault. So, I don't understand Daniel Penny being the guy that killed him because he was loud, or killed him because he was Black. The person that killed him was not held responsible because he did not do anything wrong. Okay, they're saying, oh, the person who killed him needs to be held responsible. He didn't do anything wrong. He probably saved several lives that day. In fact, we should be saying he's a hero. Multiple protesters have been arrested after the Daniel Penny verdict. Some are threatening to unleash violence throughout New York City. Protesters, in the background there of that clip, you could hear them saying, no justice, no peace, no justice, no peace. There have been reports, threats, violent threats made against Daniel Penny. So I'm assuming that none of these people have jobs, by the way, because this was like at noon on Monday. And why on earth are you out there protesting this verdict on a Monday afternoon? I'm assuming that none of these people have jobs. And, you know, they even went as far, and I won't play the rest of the clip. I'll just tell you what they wind up saying. They say that Neely was just hungry and he asked Daniel Penny for food, which was just absolutely ridiculous. It wasn't because he was hungry that he died. Daniel Penny was not asked for food. He said, somebody's going to die today. That's what Jordan Neely said on the subway. Daniel Penny reacted and he tried to save people on that subway that day. So the real injustice here is that Daniel Penny is in this place in the first, was targeted by the justice system in the first place solely because he's a white male. He never should have been put on trial. He's a hero in this situation. And the worst part is that the people responsible for this evil, for this weaponization of the justice system, they all get to keep their jobs. Nobody is held accountable. This is one of the biggest injustices out of this whole situation. I mean, this is a big, big injustice. And they went after Daniel Penny solely because he was white, and they wanted to make it a big racial issue. So I got to take a quick break. But when we come back, actually, I am going to get into this, and then we'll take a quick break. Man is now in custody. He was taken into custody yesterday morning with the assassination of the UnitedHealthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. The man is being questioned and was questioned yesterday in Pennsylvania. The man is being called a, quote, person of interest, which is interesting. I guess he's the suspect. His name is Luigi Mengoni. I don't know. But he was using a fake ID. They found him at a McDonald's, and he was at a Starbucks. This national manhunt was underway for like the past week. I hadn't talked about it a whole lot because I wanted to wait to see what happened, wanted to wait and see what we had as far as suspects go. This is really interesting. This guy had like a high IQ, was valedictorian at an Ivy League school. The suspect is anyway. And this is where he allegedly assassinated the UnitedHealthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, on a Manhattan street last week. So he was outside of a Hilton hotel on 6th Avenue, and he was approached by a masked guy with a gun. And the man shot him and fled. The man took a bike to Central Park, ditched his backpack, and headed for an uptown bus station near George Washington Bridge. Okay, so he went to a bus station right away, took a bike, ditched his backpack, which is all very interesting because he just was really smart. I think he really planned this out. And before the killing, after the killing, he made a couple of missteps along the way, but he could have gotten away with it had he not pulled down his mask, actually, to, flirt with a couple of people. He flirted with somebody and he pulled down his mask. He was wearing like a COVID-19 looking mask, and he pulled it down to flirt with this hostel. It's different than a hotel worker. And then he pulled it down again at a Starbucks to flirt with so this guy's a flirty guy. And had he not been flirtatious and pulling down his mask, he probably wouldn't have been caught. So he is very, very smart. This suspect is very, very smart. And the police finally caught him, though. Thompson was rushed to a hospital. He was pronounced dead. He leaves behind his wife, Paulette, and his 2 children. What's really disturbing to me is the news reporting on this. I think I read something out of the Chicago Sun-Times that this was inevitable because of all of the claim denials, and people are angry and they've expressed their frustrations with the healthcare system. Okay, and nothing ever justifies assassination or killing. Okay, and it's really unfortunate that you have leftist media outlets almost making it seem like the healthcare industry and the way that it is what killed this guy, Brian Thompson. That's not true. We have a suspect. It was a person who killed Brian Thompson. Apparently, he had a manifesto, so I think we'll probably learn more about why he did it in the coming days. We know more about the shooter than Donald Trump's assassin, right? Crooks. We know nothing about Thomas Crooks. So We know way more about this guy. But Brian, he leaves behind his wife, Paulette, and his 2 kids, and their house was actually targeted a couple of hours after he was shot. And his wife said that there have been a lot of threats surrounding her husband due to his work. UnitedHealthcare is the nation's largest private insurer. So there have been some threats. She said, basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage. That's what people are upset about. And she goes, I don't know the details, but I do know that people were threatening him. He's held this job as CEO since 2021. So I get why people are upset. I do. I get why people are upset with the system, but it doesn't justify outright terrorism, okay? The system is broken, but this is terrorism going after CEOs. Do we want a world where we just execute CEOs because we don't like them? No, absolutely not. The left and the right, we both agree that the system is broken. We just have different ways of going about it, right? The left wants socialized healthcare, and we have said, hey, no, actually, that's what's making our healthcare system so broken. And we want it to be privatized. We want the insurers to compete, and we want taxpayer dollars to be taken out of it. Rather than blaming insurance companies, the real culprits here are probably the lawmakers. If I have to be honest with you, in the Affordable Care Act, the lawmakers who specifically voted for the Affordable Care Act and continue to endorse the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare. Those people, if you want someone to blame, it's definitely those people that caused this broken healthcare system. Now, like I said, this guy is an outright terrorist. He's going down and gunning people down. Now, I don't know if it's because a claim was denied or what, but absolutely insane. I bet insurance agents are like really panicked, and they're like sweating. They're like, oh man, I don't want to deny any claims today because of what happened. And we shouldn't live in a world like that. But the Affordable Care Act, that's what's to blame here, okay? I'm going to get to this here on the other side. I want to talk about why the healthcare system is so broken, why it's so expensive, why there's so many claim denials, why premiums have gone up. And really, it's because government stuck their nose where it didn't belong. And I say this all of the time, every sector that is heavily subsidized by the government, airlines, healthcare insurance, car insurance, what is it? Car dealerships, even like just by purchasing a car. People want to avoid these sectors. Why? Because the insurance stuck the government stuck their nose where it didn't belong, and they've corroded these sectors of industry, and they've subsidized it. And it just makes them crappy when you have government insert themselves into certain sectors. So we're going to talk about it here next on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9 The News and Talk Bloomington Normal. I'll be right back. Find me on YouTube and find me on Rumble. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in. Yes. So before we took a break, I was telling you a little bit about, how people are really lashing out. They're expressing their frustrations, and they're saying, it was inevitable that the CEO for UnitedHealthcare was assassinated because people are so upset about how broken our healthcare system is. And I understand we all can agree that the healthcare system is broken, but this was an act of terrorism. And to get out there and kind of downplay what happened and to not hold somebody and we have somebody in custody now, right? They've got this guy in custody. His name is Luigi Mengoni, something like that. And he's 26 years old, really smart guy, I guess. We're going to get into, how he kind of planned his killing because it really speaks to how smart this guy is. He planned it very, very carefully before and after. The only reason why he was probably caught was because he pulled down his mask a couple of times to flirt with a hostel worker and a Starbucks worker, right? A barista. So he pulled down his mask to flirt with some people, and that was probably the only reason why he was caught. He was he threw off, ditched a backpack in Central Park, and he tried to throw off the investigation. He had some play Monopoly money in there, and his DNA all over everything. And police believe that he ditched his backpack on purpose to try to throw the investigation off or to derail that investigation. So guy's really smart. We shouldn't be distracted by we can talk about how broken the healthcare system is, but that is not the reason why this person was a terrorist, an assassin, and he should be treated as such. And, to sit there and say that, oh, the broken healthcare system is what killed Brian Thompson, the CEO, that's just not true. What did kill it was, or kill him, I think that the real culprits here would be, who broke that healthcare system, who made this, healthcare system so broken. And it's really the lawmakers who were proponents of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Okay, so Barack Obama, you have him to thank for our broken healthcare system. If you want to blame anybody, blame the real culprits of the broken healthcare system, and that's the lawmakers who voted for this stupid Obamacare. So firstly, what Obamacare did, it forces young people like me, actually, I really don't want healthcare, but I've got to have it by law, right? It forced young people who did not otherwise, it forces them to purchase health insurance. And it made it difficult for you to not purchase health insurance. You kind of need health insurance. Otherwise, it's just completely unaffordable. So it forced everyone to purchase health insurance, including young people who otherwise did not need to purchase health insurance. It also forced insurance companies to accept everybody who's with pre-existing conditions, including those with self-induced diabetes, those who are grossly overweight and could not care less about their health. Their diet consists of Lay's potato chips and Pepsi. Okay. Those people, you have to accept them no matter what, those insurance companies. Now, you don't have many new, young, healthy people joining in. You don't just have many new young people joining in, you have lowering the overall risk pool. You have to guarantee all of these people joining now will increase the cost. You have a guarantee that these people joining in now is going to increase the cost. Okay, so you've got to protect, or you've got to ensure many new young people, but you've also got to ensure the people with the pre-existing conditions. This is what the Affordable Care Act is. It puts all kinds of mandates on the private insurers, and it put all kinds of mandates on the private insurers back then. And it's like having car companies cover people with suspended licenses. Okay. Car companies don't want to do that. And there's good reason. I've got to take a quick break, but we're going to talk about why claim denial rates are so high. It's really because of the Affordable Care Act screwing up the entire healthcare system. We'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in. Yes, love this. AARP pushed Obamacare like it was the second coming. Yes, there's a reason why these lobbyists, AARP, it's just a lobbying organization, okay? And this is a like revolving door. This is the best way I can kind of explain it. The lobbyists, they lobby the government, and it's a revolving door of favors from these lobbyists to the government, and then the government back to these lobbyists and to these industries. So AARP had everything to gain from Obamacare. And really, at the end of the day, like UnitedHealthcare, a lot of these private insurers, they love Obamacare because there is no mandate for them to actually, I don't know, compete and be good insurers and keep the prices low because they just keep getting government bailouts. When you have a constant, never ending supply of taxpayer dollars, of course, you're going to keep upping the premiums, and you're going to keep upping the deductibles. Okay, that's just when there is no incentive to really keep the prices low, and you place all these mandates on private insurers, like having to include or having to cover people with pre-existing conditions, including those with self-induced diabetes. Now, what I'd imagine if we were just to let the insurers kind of go, and let them do their own thing and let it all be free market, right? What I would imagine is that there would be a niche private insurer who would cover people with pre-existing conditions solely. They'd probably carve themselves out from the rest of the insurance industry, and they would be powerhouses because everybody with pre-existing conditions that knows, well, I can go to this insurance company, they'll cover me, and they'll do very, very well. Okay, so there could be one industry or one insurance company that actually takes everybody with the pre-existing conditions, right? And they'll be able to make money because they have everybody with pre-existing conditions. Now, with the other insurers, they're going to be able to reduce their prices and reduce their premiums because they're not dishing out all of this money to take care of the self-induced diabetes people or the pre-existing conditions. Okay, I'd imagine that's how it would kind of play out. That a company would carve themselves out of the industry and kind of be like the only ones in the market that cover people with pre-existing conditions. The problem is that you had lawmakers who voted for this, and we're giving a never-ending supply of taxpayer dollars to the healthcare industry, and that's why they keep increasing the costs. Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk looping to normal. So do appreciate you tuning in. Before we took a break, I was telling you about the Affordable Care Act. Yes, Obamacare, otherwise known as Obamacare. So if you want to blame anybody for the broken healthcare system, don't blame the insurers, blame the lawmakers who voted for the Affordable Care Act, because that's where we really start to see and it's not going to be a perfect system. Even without the Affordable Care Act, it wasn't a perfect system. But Republicans, Democrats, we all agree that the healthcare system is broken. We just have different ways of going about it. Affordable Care Act, what it did, it forced people to purchase health insurance, including young people who didn't otherwise did not believe that they needed to purchase health insurance. Okay. So it forced insurance companies to also cover people with pre-existing conditions, including the people who have self-induced pre-existing conditions. What do I mean by that? Fat people who live on a diet of cookies and soda. Okay. Self-induced diabetes. Okay. So what I would imagine would happen if we just let the insurance companies go and we removed the taxpayer dollars, what they would have to do is compete. Now, there's a lot of people out there with pre-existing conditions. I'd imagine that a smart insurance company who wants to make a ton of money, they would carve out and kind of create a niche company for people with pre-existing conditions. Hey, we only cover people with pre-existing conditions. They're going to get 75% of America that way. I don't know how it would all play out because unfortunately we have a system where we just pump an endless supply of taxpayer dollars into this industry, and that is why they are increasing premiums, and that is why there is claim denial rates are so high. So I wanted to talk about this morning because a lot of people deal with this high premiums, denial rate, or claims being denied. But here's the problem, car insurance companies, they don't cover people. They'll tell you straight up, hey, if you have like 7 tickets, your rate is going to be really, really high if you constantly speed. Or if you have suspended licenses, your rate's really high. Your premiums are really high with car insurance companies. So that's just the way it goes. But with these pre-existing conditions, I know it might sound awful, but if you were to just let your hands off of the insurance industry, it would probably work itself out. Like I said, there'd be a niche industry or insurance company that would probably only cover people with pre-existing health conditions. So I want to talk about this revolving door. It's a revolving door of lobbyists who want favors, and they give favors to the government, and then the government then turns around and gives these industries favors. It's a revolving door of favors from these lobbyists to government, and then government back to these industries. And that is what the Affordable Care Act is. I want to read something out of Axios. But before I do that, let's talk about how high premiums are actually in the healthcare industry. So there was no cap on how much these companies could raise expenses. Okay, now these companies, the medical devices, the big pharma, everything that the healthcare industry needs, right? These companies that control all of that, there was no cap when the Affordable Care Act was passed. And what they did, they just raised all of their expenses, knowing that they were going to get kickbacks from the government and get money from the government, these health insurers, okay? So subsequently, premiums went up by and deductibles by over 50%. Okay, this is all after the Affordable Care Act. Okay, premiums have gone up by over 80% after the Affordable Care Act, deductibles by over 50% after the Affordable Care Act. It's almost like the Affordable Care Act is to blame. And government bailouts. The key fact here is the unlimited government bailouts. We do have a problem, and it gets really bad when it includes government intervention. So when the government intervenes and they've got their nose in a sector, it always winds up really, really expensive and really terrible. For example, airlines, right? That is a highly subsidized industry. Everybody is traumatized by having to fly because it's such a terrible experience. Why? Because the government has subsidized that industry. In 2016, $170 billion went to bailouts for insurance companies. Now, this occurred because of the mandates. They said, okay, we're going to bail you guys out because we mandated you with the Affordable Care Act to take more young people who didn't otherwise want insurance. We kind of forced you to take young people, and we kind of forced you to accept people with pre-existing conditions. So now we're going to bail you out $170 billion of taxpayer funds, mind you. So that occurred because of the mandates, the bailouts, okay? According to Axios, health industries spending on federal lobbying rose 70% from 2000 to 2020. Okay, so this is the problem. Federal lobbying, health industries, they're spending a lot of money spending on federal lobbying, okay? Largely driven by drug and device makers and activities surrounding the Affordable Care Act, according to new research. The industry as a whole spent $713.6 million lobbying federal lawmakers in 2020. Compared that to $358.2 million in 2000. So it's gone up by like over $400 million. That's insane. This is just lobbying, and then government giving you favors via legislation. And the only people who are benefiting are people in the industry and the government, right? Because they get campaign donations from these lobbyists and from these industries. So drug and device manufacturers accounted for about 43% of the total in 2020, or $308.4 million. So 43% of the total lobbying in 2020, drug and device manufacturers, okay? So 7 of the top 10 organizations registered to lobby on the Inflation Reduction Act out of more than 2,000 total were pharmaceutical and health insurance companies. So everybody lobbying to get this Inflation Reduction Act passed, a lot of the lobbyists were pharmaceutical and health insurance companies. So at what point are hundreds of $billions not enough? Okay, like I said, in 2016, they got a $170 billion bailout, a government bailout because of these mandates. And they're spending all of this money on lobbying. They're spending all of this money on paying politicians and their campaigns, getting them reelected. And they're more profitable than ever. And the reason why the industry is super, super profitable and the pharmaceutical and health insurance companies are super, super profitable is because there's this constant, never-ending supply of taxpayer dollars going to these industries and these companies. Yeah, of course, you're going to have this, premiums and everything go up when you have this constant, never-ending supply of taxpayer dollars. It's just the thing that's going to happen. So we need competition back in the insurance industry. We need to get the government thumb off of it, and it's going to fix itself. I promise. It's going to fix itself. Is it going to be perfect? No. But I promise you, you're not going to be paying 80% higher premiums. I mean, that's what happened. Premiums went up over 80%, and deductibles went up over 50% after the Affordable Care Act. So if you want to blame somebody, blame the lawmakers who passed this Affordable Care Act and pretty much gave unlimited access of taxpayer dollars to health insurance companies and to the pharmaceutical industry. Okay, so there's no cap, like I said, on how much they can charge these companies. Pharmaceutical companies can charge the insurance companies or charge people. Essentially charge the insurance companies. But, the best way I like to explain it is this example. Okay. Now, my dad, he came down with COVID and it was really, really bad. It was really bad and he was in the hospital. Now, there was a much more affordable treatment to provide him. Now, to get kind of graphic, it's your nose bleeds when you have oxygen. Sometimes it dries out your nose and your nose will bleed. And were these medical devices. Okay. And a company makes them. I don't know what company it was, but it was a pharmaceutical company, people who make medical devices. And it's like a little plug that goes up your nose. But there's a much easier, more long-lasting means of treatment. And it's cauterizing your nose. So you literally quite go up there and you burn up your nose up there, and it kind of stops the bleeding if you cauterize it. And it stops the bleeding. You do it once, it lasts for a couple of weeks or something like that. But this ear, nose, and throat doctor was shoving this nose plug down our throats. Why? Because the pharmaceutical companies want them sold. And then the insurance companies, they're in on it with the pharmaceutical companies, and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll only cover this, but we're not going to cover the cost-effective option. It's just a mess. It's just a total mess, and everybody's getting rich but you, and they're increasing your premiums, and they're not giving you good care when you're going to these places. So bottom line, it's just we need more competition in the industry. All right, I do want to shift gears and talk a little bit more about, I do want to talk about this HelloFresh in Aurora, because they're being looked at by the feds and they're facing accusations from the U.S. Department of Labor because they're employing migrant children. This is child labor laws. So we're going to talk about it here next on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Okay. Yeah, and the lack of doctors. Yeah, because it's more cost effective probably for the nurse practitioners, and there's a lack of doctors. I've talked about this before, where we've kind of lowered the standards for who needs to be in our hospitals and in our healthcare industry. We've lowered those standards actually by law. and now there's an overwhelming amount of nurse practitioners, and there's a total lack of doctors. I think I went to the doctor, or tried to go to the doctor, and it's all just nurse practitioners, and there's nobody that actually has a doctorate. There's like 3 doctors in the entire area, and like they'll call them in if necessary. So like it's just this constant dumbing down of like standards that we should hold ourselves in excellence. It's an attack on excellence, which happens, from the left, where they'll attack excellence, and that's why you're seeing this increase of nurse practitioners. But it's also like it's not as expensive to hire nurse practitioners with no experience. So it's all about increasing their profits, the healthcare industry, which is just really insane to me, because they've just got this funnel of endless taxpayer dollars. You'd think that they'd be using those unlimited taxpayer dollars for, I don't know, hiring doctors, or using cost-effective, like you would think that they would use cost-effective treatments. Like for the example with my dad and his nose bleeding, you would think that they'd use a cost-effective treatment like cauterizing his nose. In fact, it's actually the better treatment, and it's more cost-effective. But they're not good stewards of taxpayer money. Why? Because they have an endless supply of taxpayer money. And they're not good stewards with the money because they could care less about the taxpayer. So you're paying for the taxes for these things, and then you're paying the premiums for these things, which actually makes absolutely no sense. If you were to take the government thumb off of all of this, and you were to take the government subsidies out of all of this, and we just stop paying this healthcare industry totally, and remove it totally, then they're going to have to compete and be better. Okay. Now, most likely they would use more cost effective, like for example, COVID, they had, what was it? Ivermectin, way more cost effective than creating and developing a vaccine. It was an antiviral, but they didn't want to use that because they wanted all of the money, right? The pharmaceutical industry wanted to pump out this vaccine and get it in as many arms as possible because they get the insurance companies to pay for it. So, yeah, it's, if you were just to remove all of that taxpayer dollars, they're going to be forced to, hey, how do we go about this the cost-effective way? I hate to say it this way, but a lot of times your general health, I'm just speaking about your general health. I'm not saying, if you get into a car accident and break your arm or whatever and you don't need surgery, I'm not saying that. But your general health, a lot of the time, the treatment is the cost-effective option. Good sleep, right? But they won't tell you that because it's not about your health. It's about making as much money as possible. So what these industries do, they won't tell you the simplest option or give you the simplest option because that's not the most expensive option. They'll put you on all kinds of drugs. They'll give you all kinds of medical devices that you do not need. So that way, you've got the pharmaceuticals making money, industry making money, the health insurance industry making money, and it's just a nightmare because what they have to do, there was after the Affordable Care Act was passed, these companies, the pharmaceutical companies, had no caps, right? So what they did, knowing that the insurers were getting all kinds of money from the government, i.e., taxpayer dollars, and that funnel was never going to dry up because it's unlimited taxpayer funds. Knowing that, what they did with no caps, right, on how much they could increase the cost of these things, they skyrocketed those costs, which naturally made the insurance companies have to raise their premiums on everybody, okay, because they let the pharmaceutical companies raise all of their products and the cost of those products. So now the insurance companies, in order to cover that nose plug, has to raise the premium on my dad, right? Because he used the nose plug rather than the cost-effective option. It's hard to explain. It's tough. Ivermectin saved my life when I got COVID. Yeah. A lot of these the simple solution is usually the best solution when it comes to your general health care. Okay. The simpler, more, the less you have to use medication and medical devices, the more healthy you're going to be and the more effective it's probably going to be. I'm just going to be honest with you. But that doesn't make money, which is why they never recommend it, and which is why America's sicker than ever. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk blooming normal. So do appreciate you tuning in. Actually, not so different. We were talking about the healthcare industry, and I was saying, hey, it's constant, never-ending supply of taxpayer dollars. The companies, the pharmaceutical companies, there was no caps after the Affordable Care Act was passed on how much they could charge for medical devices and medications. Right. So there was no caps on that, which they knew, the pharmaceutical companies knew that the insurers were going to get all kinds of taxpayer dollars and they were going to be bailed out by the government. So what they did is raised their prices, knowing that it was going to be paid for via the taxpayer dollars, because the insurance companies then raised their premiums because um, the cost of medicine and the cost of devices keep going up, and up, because the pharmaceutical industries know that the government is subsidizing the insurers. So the insurers naturally, they increased the premiums, they increased the deductibles. So the Affordable Care Act, and this is staggering. Subsequently, after the Affordable Care Act, premiums went up over 80% and deductibles by over 50%. In 2016, like I said, $170 or $70 billion with a B dollar bailout for insurance companies in 2016. Just terrible. And it's just this never-ending revolving door of lobbyists doing favors for the government, and the government doing favors for these industries. It's just terrible. So I was talking about the guy who assassinated Brian Thompson, and that's why I'm talking about the health insurance industry, because everybody is saying, oh, the industry is what killed Brian Thompson. No, who killed Brian Thompson is maybe the suspect. We don't know for sure, but allegedly the suspect, because he's a wild assassin and a terrorist. The UnitedHealthcare Investors Conference wasn't supposed to happen until 8 o'clock, and this guy knew, whoever shot this guy, knew that he was going to walk out in front of his hotel at 6:44 a.m. Still unclear how he knew he was going to walk out, Thompson, but the man shot the CEO from behind. He was masked. After the killing, he discarded a Starbucks bottle and an energy bar wrapper, a burner phone, and the authorities obtained, fingerprints, DNA off of all of this, and he dropped off a distinctive looking backpack that looked like the backpack that he wore in the shooting. Okay. And police are thinking that this particular suspect is really, really smart, and he has the intelligence, and that was all planned for him to drop off the backpack in Central Park. And you might think that that's a crucial mistake, because he left all of his DNA in there, Starbucks bottle, right, burner phone, all of that. But actually, the police are saying that they're not ruling it out that that he had planned for the cops to find the backpack, and it kind of derailed the investigation to try to throw off the investigation. So they opened up the backpack. They found a jacket and some Monopoly play money. So he was actually kind of playing with them. I really do believe this. The suspect, smart guy, a valedictorian at an Ivy League school, high IQ. So then after the shooting, he ran from the scene, hopped on an electric bike, rode to Central Park, ditched the bikes, hailed a taxi, then got onto a bus. So this was a very complicated exit strategy, and he definitely practiced it. This is what the experts are saying. The FBI special agent, Ken Gray, said this to CNN, that he had to have practiced this ahead of time. From the site of the shooting at the hotel to his apparent departure out of New York, he had practiced his exit strategy. So, quote, here we go. The fact that he was able to get to that location, be there in time, shoot Thompson, then get to his bike, get out of there, get on a bus and out of the area, out of New York as quickly as he did, it shows that he practiced this, that he knew what he was doing. He knew what his exit route was going to be. So this was a very carefully planned killing. Apparently, they found a manifesto at this McDonald's, where he was spotted at McDonald's. Investigators found numerous fake IDs. They saw this gun that was crafted and built. It's a gun without a serial number. I hate that term, ghost gun. It's a gun without a serial number. And unlike and they're like, oh, it's untraceable. It's untraceable. You can't track guns with a serial number anyway. Okay, so I don't understand this whole like, oh, ghost guns, ghost guns. They're just trying to freak you out. They found a gun with him that had a suppressor, and he had built this gun, right? Manufactured his own gun, which just goes to show that he's really, really smart. People with ghost guns, they know how to assemble this gun. Multiple law enforcement, they said that, the only reason why they probably caught this guy was because he pulled down his mask on a couple of occasions, one occasion before the actual killing, to flirt with a hostel worker. And he went to a hostel instead of a hotel because hotels tend to ask you for a credit card, and he wanted to pay cash. So he pulled down his mask to flirt with this lady, and then he pulled down his mask again to flirt with a Starbucks employee. So this guy's like flirtatious behavior probably is what ultimately got him caught by the cops. So I brought up the healthcare industry. Like I said, it's not necessarily the healthcare industry that we can both agree, right, left, we can all agree that the healthcare system is broken. Number one, I hate saying that that's why the CEO died. Okay, we don't even really know what's in the manifesto. I'd imagine it has something to do with a claim denial and being upset with the healthcare industry. Taylor Lorenz followed this guy, by the way, so I'm thinking this guy's a leftist. And, rather than blaming the insurance companies, the real culprit here, they're the lawmakers who voted for this Affordable Care Act and funneled this unending stream of taxpayer dollars into this industry, which ultimately caused the pharmaceutical companies to raise their costs, and no cap, right? There's no cap on how much these pharmaceutical companies can charge for something. I gave you an example, and this is the best example I can give. I start to scratch my head in my dad. When he had COVID, there's two ways to kind of stop a nosebleed. There's one, cauterizing it. It's more effective. It's definitely cost effective. But they were so adamant on stuffing this thing up his nose. And I kept asking them, why would you not just cauterize it? I'm so confused why you wouldn't cauterize it. They said, no, we can't. The reason why they can't is because the pharmaceutical companies need their money. Okay, they make these medical devices. They want you to use the medical devices. They don't want you to use the cost-effective option. And they're not good stewards of taxpayer dollars. Okay, and a lot of times the cost-effective, the simplest option is the best thing for your general health. Good sleep. Doctors, if I go to a general practitioner anymore, or like just a regular doctor for a checkup, they're not going to tell you, hey, do you get 8 hours of sleep? It used to be that way, prior to probably the Affordable Care Act. If I trace back my steps a little bit, I was a young little whippersnapper that they would always tell me, are you getting enough sleep? What are you eating? And they'd ask you these very, very simple questions because those are very simple ways to keep your general health good. Excellent is sleep, diet, exercise. Doctors don't talk about that anymore. It's really weird. As an adult, and I don't know if it was shift because I was an adult, but prior to the Affordable Care Act, I was just a kid. I was just a young kid, but I remember even back then as a kid, doctors would talk to me and they'd ask me, hey, are you sleeping? Are you eating correctly? You're not getting into cookies, right? And there's just been this shift of, hey, let's throw every kind of medication down your throat, and let's throw every kind of medical device down your throat, because we want to make our money, and we know that your insurance company is going to pay for it because they're subsidized by the government, and they have to pay for this no matter how much we. And they're just going to keep raising your premiums. Okay, so we know that the insurance companies are going to have to pay for this, and they're going to raise your premiums, and they have a never-ending supply of government taxpayer dollars because they're subsidized, and we're going to keep raising our costs because we know this. We know that the government's just going to back and bail out the insurance companies like they always do. And the prices have just gotten so astronomical on these things. Like one of those little nose plugs, I bet it was thousands of dollars, which makes no sense because to be fair, it just kind of looks like a little tampon, and they're charging thousands of dollars for these stupid little medical devices that I could probably makeshift at my house. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if you want to blame anybody, blame the lawmakers who passed the Affordable Care Act. They're the real culprits here. I do want to talk, don't go killing CEOs of and I'm not saying to go kill lawmakers. Please don't misuse my words, but stop blaming the insurance companies. They are partially to blame. I won't say that they're blameless in this situation, but really it's the government subsidies that's causing the high premiums and the claim denials because they're forced. There's these mandates. It's just a mess. All right, I do want to talk about this story. HelloFresh is kind of the same story, but different. HelloFresh, it's the largest meal provider in the U.S. They do these like little meal kits, and they've been accused now by the U.S. Department of Labor of employing migrant children. ABC7 reports that 6 teenagers from Guatemala were found working night shifts at the factory. HelloFresh cut ties with Midway Staffing. Now, this is a temporary, it's like a job agency, like a temp agency that hires migrants. And they are being investigated now by the Federal Labor Agency. And the Illinois Department of Labor provided the Center Square. No comment. You guys can read this on the centersquare.com. State Representative Chris Miller, he called this incident an example of state-sanctioned human trafficking. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Okay, HelloFresh, they told ABC that they were troubled by this temp agency, the staffing agency, Midway Staffing. Okay, remember that because it's going to be important a little bit later. Midway Staffing, this is a temp agency who facilitated the hiring of these migrant children. They're known for hiring migrants, okay? But they facilitated the hiring of these migrant children. So they're trying to blame this temp agency. Really, what I think this is HelloFresh actually partnered with a nonprofit organization, a non-government organization called Tent Partnership for Refugees. Tent is a nonprofit that supplies big corporations like HelloFresh with cheap refugee labor. Okay, go look it up. Their whole mission is to to place refugees in jobs at these big corporations. They have partnered with thousands. It looks like 1,000, if not, maybe hundreds, but maybe 1,000 companies they've partnered with this Tent nonprofit organization. And really what it is, it's like, state sanctioned, or it's like legal human trafficking that they're doing. And they're doing it all under the guise of, oh, look, we're helping the refugees. We're placing them. Really what they're doing is they're exploiting these people and providing these huge companies like HelloFresh cheap labor. Miller said Tom Homan, President-elect Donald Trump's pick for border security, will be like a pit bull in getting this stuff done. I hope that he starts with Illinois. This is a prime place to start. I think we should start throwing, you should probably start by throwing our governor and some of these politicians in jail for facilitating this nonsense, right? So it's the open borders, it's getting the migrants here, the nonprofit, they have their migrants, and then in turn, the big corporations benefit because they get the cheap labor, and they're all in and on it together, right? I mean, it's state sanctioned. Everybody's making money, but you're the one, and the refugees, really, in this case, are getting shafted, screwed over. The people are getting screwed over, and the big corporations like HelloFresh and the lawmakers who, then in turn get or campaign donations from, Tent Partnership for Refugees. And actually, this Midway Staffing, this temp agency, I found it interesting how many campaign contributions they've made to Illinois politicians. The city of Berwyn, the mayor there, Robert Lavero. You've got State Representative Fred Crespo. You've got Secretary of State Alexi Janulius. You've got the State Senator Don DeWitt. Right? According to Reform for Illinois' database, all of these people got campaign contributions from this Midway Staffing, who's now under federal investigation, by the way, for employing children and violating child labor laws. Okay, so I like what Chris Miller says. This is state sanctioned. Everybody's in on it. And the people are getting screwed. Specifically in this situation, the refugees are getting screwed. You know, they contact this nonprofit who promises to get them a job. They might have to pay a fee, right, to this nonprofit or make a donation to this nonprofit, who then in turns sells these people out to these big corporations for cheap labor. And it's like it's all legal. There's nothing really you can do about it. Hopefully, Tom Homan gets in there and dismantles this whole industry. So it's legalized. You're exactly right. Legalized slave labor. Legalized slave labor. All right, I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. I heard it was a 3D printed gun. I think it's all kind of the same. It's a gun that he manufactured himself and like kind of built himself. You know, I hate the term ghost gun. I don't know exactly what to call the gun itself. It's just a gun that he manufactured. Well, here we go. It's an unserialized, there's no serial number on it, gun. Now, people who don't know anything about guns don't understand that even guns with serial numbers cannot be traced. Okay, so they're trying to scare you into thinking that these ghost guns are on the street, and these so-called ghost guns are on the street, and they're really, really dangerous because they're not traceable. You can't trace a gun with a serial number anyway. So yeah, it really doesn't matter. He was found with a gun that he manufactured himself. Okay, bottom line, it's not a ghost gun. It's not a problem, right? People can either buy a gun from somebody else who manufactured it, or they can manufacture their own guns. There's no real difference except you're the one who manufactures it and somebody else manufactures it, and there's no serial number on it, okay? Serial numbers cannot be traced. It's impossible, pretty much, to trace those serial numbers. So if you want to be technical about this, all guns are ghost guns. They're not traceable. Now, if you buy it from, say, a dealer, that dealer could say that you bought a gun, but he can say, you know, and he might have the make and model of what kind of gun you bought, but he's not going to, you know, be able to trace that back to you. So it's impossible to trace guns. All guns are essentially what you would call ghost guns anyway. Yeah, legalized slave labor. This is a huge story. And it's really concerning that you have this midway, what is it called, staffing. They made campaign contributions to several Illinois politicians, which raises my eyebrows. Why in the hell would a temp agency that is known for employing migrants or getting migrants employed, why the hell are they contributing to Illinois politicians? It's kind of weird. And I like how Miller says this. He says, this is inhumane, immoral, and it's all because of our open border policies. So the lawmakers, you know, open the floodgates for these migrants to come in. Who benefits from that? Well, it's this tent, nonprofit organizations and other nonprofit organizations like that. They benefit from that. Now, Tent has a partnership with HelloFresh. Okay, they supply legally the migrants who come to them for help. They supply big corporations cheap refugee labor. So the lawmakers are helping the tent organization or the tent partnership, and then in turn, the tent partner or the tent organization donates to lawmakers for allowing this open border. So in December of 2022, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, signed a memorandum of understanding with the Tent Partnership, with this organization, this nonprofit organization, to, quote, expand economic opportunity for refugees in the private sector. This is state-sanctioned slave labor. The Tent Partnership, they're supplying, definitely. They refuse to mention their partnership, HelloFresh, with this tent organization, and then they threw the Midway Staffing Temp Agency under the bus. But really, probably what happened, and I don't know for sure, what happened was that this tent nonprofit organization worked with this Midway Staffing to get these migrant children hired. They worked with HelloFresh's temp agency to get the kids hired. So they're violating child labor laws. And they used midway staffing in a lot of these temp agencies as middlemen just in case they get caught, and then the temp agency goes down. But it's still concerning that you have this temp agency that is contributing to politicians' campaign coffers as well. So how do we fix this? Is it bills crafted by State Senator Robert Peters? He got this bill signed by the governor here in Illinois. The bill requires minors to end work by 7 p.m. on school nights. Peter said the law, which goes into effect in January, ensures young Illinoisans have a healthy balance between their work responsibility and personal lives. Here's the thing. I don't think things are like that are going to help. When you have people who want to make money and want to make money off the backs of children, they're gonna do it no matter how many laws or feel good bills that you get passed and signed by the governor. I'm gonna be honest with you. Also, if you really wanted to stop this, you would stop endorsing and subscribing to open border policies. That's what you would do if you really cared about ending child labor and the exploitation of migrant children. And you wouldn't fly kids out to unknown places, unaccompanied minors you find at the border. You wouldn't fly those kids out to unknown places and addresses. So you really want to address the refugees or you really want to address the child labor violations, then you need to stop the open border and stop the bleeding. But they won't do that. Why? Why do the lawmakers support the open border? It's because they get kickbacks, they get government money, or they get campaign money is funneled into their accounts from nonprofit organizations that need these refugees to supply the big corporations with that cheap refugee labor. And those nonprofit organizations, in turn, donate to those lawmakers who support open border policies. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk blooming to normal. So I do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. HelloFresh, under investigation by the U.S. Department of Labor, specifically their temp agency that they had hired and they ultimately employed migrant children, allegedly. So this is all under investigation. This was a factory in Aurora. Reportedly, 6 teenagers from Guatemala were found working the night shift. Now, HelloFresh, they are definitely throwing this midway staffing under the bus. It's a temp agency, and they definitely should be if they're employing and facilitating the hiring of migrant children and violating child labor laws. Yes, they should be thrown under the bus. But here's what HelloFresh left out. They didn't talk about how they have a partnership with Tent Partnership for Refugees. Now, Tent Partnership for Refugees, this is a nonprofit organization. And their whole thing in December of 2022, I'm not even making this up, they're tasked. They actually had this signed. So the state Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in 2022 signed a memorandum of understanding, so official documentation, that the Tent Partnership, that Tent Partnership for Refugees, will expand and is tasked with expanding economic opportunity for refugees in the private sector. Okay, so now Tent, this is a nonprofit organization that has, if not 1,000, hundreds upon hundreds of big corporations they've partnered with, and they supply HelloFresh with cheap refugee labor. This is legalized slave labor. And who is at the helm of this? This is Tony Blinken signing this understanding. And you wonder why politicians are pro-open border. You wonder why Governor J.B. Pritzker and politicians here in Illinois are like, yeah, open the border, sanctuary state. We are all about the migrants. We want all of them. The reason why they do that is because, in turn, what Tent will do, or non-profit organizations like Tent for Refugees, Tent Partnership for Refugees, what those non-government organizations do, they contribute money to those politicians. Okay, they'll contribute money to those politicians for their policies that are favorable to their cause. They have a task by the federal government to expand economic opportunity for refugees. And they'll say, oh, to expand economic opportunity for refugees, which sounds great. But then you find out that these refugees are actually children, and they're being shoved into places like HelloFresh, and they're being forced to work into the wee hours of the night. Okay, then there's a problem. Okay, so it's inhumane, it's immoral, and it's because of our open border policies and cities and states adopting the sanctuary status. This isn't an oops. I like how Chris Miller says this. He says, this is all on purpose. This is part of a multinational human sex trafficking ring. This is a globalist company, by the way. Tent, this nonprofit organization, it's everywhere. It's in every country. I mean, they are globalists, and they're supplying major corporations, multiple corporations, big corporations around the world with cheap refugee labor. And it's really sad. It's really sad because they'll dupe these refugees into thinking that, oh, we're a nonprofit organization. We're going to help you. We love you. We're all about the refugees. We want to help you. It's legalized slave labor. That's what this is. I do want to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'm going to talk about, how do we fix this? How can we fix this? It's by the dismantling of these organizations, these nonprofit organizations, defanging them, and then also stopping the bleeding, borders, right? Not allowing so-called refugees, migrants to come across the border and to get into places like this tent partnership for refugees, and to avoid them getting into those types of nonprofit organizations and being manipulated by those organizations. So we've got to stop the bleeding. We've got to cut off the border, right? We also have to dismantle these people and go after them for what they're doing, which is actually slave labor. Okay, so laws like Senator Robert Peters, Republicans say, are not going to do anything because you need to stop the open border policies, and you need to stop the sanctuary statuses, and you have to stop allowing these nonprofit organizations to have such a stronghold over our politicians. You shouldn't accept money from these types of people as a politician. And you need to defang them and cut them off by their knees, right? And kneecap them, right? These organizations. So Senator Robert Peters, a Democrat from Chicago, got a bill signed from the governor, or by the governor. The bill requires minors to end work by 7 p.m. on school nights, all minors. Peter said that the law goes into effect in January, and it ensures young Illinoisans have a healthy work-life balance. Okay, I get it. It sounds like a nice feel-good bill, but at the end of the day, you've got politicians introducing bills like this one, and then they're still taking money from Tent Partnership for Refugees. They're taking money from these non-government organizations. They're promoting open border policy. They're promoting sanctuary statuses. And this is going to do nothing. This bill is absolutely going to do nothing to stop child labor laws from being violated. What really needs to happen is a closed border policies, and we need to uproot and dismantle these non-government organizations who are participating in slave labor. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk blooming to normal. Yeah, yep, and most likely, I know that the Mexican president right now, I forget her name, she is said to be the cartel pick. Now she won the most bloodiest election, and I'm not even kidding here. CNN reported that this was the most bloody election of Mexican history. Okay, and she won this election, and you had people killing other people in different political parties over there. So yeah, kickback from the cartels for bringing the children. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. It's really bad. Who's forcing these kids to work? You sound like a liberal. What makes slave labor and how? It's cheap labor. How do you know it's cheap labor? There's definitely, I know that the Illinois Department of Labor has a case against this Midway Staffing, who is an agency that actually hires migrants. They're known for that kind of thing, and they hire migrants. And right now, the Illinois Department of Labor is investigating that same staffing company for a wage claim. So there is facts about refugees and migrants being paid lower wages than those of Americans. Okay. And that's just not right. You've got companies who are supplying these big corporations, companies, I call them companies, they're organizations, non-government organizations. You've got them supplying these big corporations with labor, and this is migrant labor, by the way. That's what they're designed to do. It's in the name, tent partnership for refugees. Now these are refugee labor, right? But really it's migrant labor because they've distorted the definition of what a refugee is. Every migrant is a refugee, according to the Democrats. And what winds up happening is these people are hired by these corporations for way less than Americans. That's just a common known fact, that migrants are paid less than those here in the United States, like citizens. Okay, and Americans actually did a jobs report, right? These corporations, it was like, what was it, 5 million more foreign-born workers or something like that got jobs. All the new jobs, it was like 5 million. Out of all the new jobs, 5 million of those new jobs were foreign-born workers, and the rest of them were government workers. That's where the jobs that were added in the jobs report, the federal jobs report, all of it was foreign-born workers. These were people who came to the country and got jobs. So these big corporations are no longer hiring Americans. They're actually hiring the foreign-born workers, and that's evident by the jobs report. And the only reason why they'd only be hiring foreign-born workers, and we didn't see an increase in American-born workers and them getting jobs, and the reason why we saw the increase with the foreign-born workers is because it's cheaper. Come on, use your brain. Of course, the big corporations are hiring the migrant labor for cheap. That's why the only growth we saw with the jobs was with foreign-born workers. It's because big corporations, via these NGOs and via these nonprofit organizations, they are giving these migrants jobs, but it's low wages, and it's slave labor. What they're doing. And in this case, HelloFresh is being accused of employing children. Okay, that's slave labor. You can't force children to pack up meals and have them work nights. And they're teenagers, right? And they shouldn't be working. In America, we have laws against that kind of stuff. You can't force kids to work and package meals at a factory if they're teens, okay? Hey, good morning, Soto. Appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. Yes, so like I said, the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, he signed a memorandum of understanding with this corporation, or with this, call them corporation, they're a nonprofit organization. It's called Tent Partnership for Refugees. Now, when they say refugees, they of course mean all migrants, because they've distorted this definition of what a refugee is. This nonprofit organization and others like it. They're not actual refugees. Refugees are people who flee things like war or persecution, or they're going to be killed. So, for example, in Syria, actually, with this whole rebel forces taking over Syria, the rebel forces are known to be killing Christians. Also, the Assad regime, they killed Christians too, but these people kill Christians as well. And the Christians are kind of worried. They're like, we're going to die because of our faith, right? So refugees are actually people who flee places of war where they're possibly persecuted for their religion, for their faith. Those are refugees. what we have here is people distorting that definition, and these nonprofits distorting that definition and accepting people into their organization, and then they supply these people and get them jobs with big corporations through partnerships with like HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, they have a partnership with HelloFresh, this specific nonprofit organization. They'll get migrants. And they're not people who are fleeing. They're just people who, want better economic prosperity or more economic prosperity. And they came to America for a better job or something like that. That's not refugees. So what this nonprofit organization will do, they'll take anybody and everybody who comes over the border via the open border policies the lawmakers are behind. And then they'll take those people and then give them jobs with these big corporations. It shouldn't shock you to know that the only job growth that we saw under the Biden administration, they were like, oh, we've got all kinds of new jobs, and Americans have a bunch of new jobs. That's not true. It all went to these new jobs that were created, foreign-born workers and government workers, public sector workers. Okay, that's the only new jobs that were created. So bottom line, this was definitely, I would say, an example of state-sanctioned. If it's true, if this investigation turns up that HelloFresh did this, state-sanctioned slave labor. It's all legal. This is the problem, and I hope Tom Homan fixes it. You guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. I love you. We'll do it all over again tomorrow morning, bright and early at 6 a.m. It's been fun. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.